right, hello everybody. I'm doing this. I'm continuing for almost 3 months straight with doing a weekly podcast and a rambling. So Rev Rund is rambling, and I'm recording on Wednesday because I'm hoping to not be in the office on Friday. So if anything huge or important happens between now and then, I apologize. It will not be commented on. You'll notice that I'm wearing a yellow smiley face t-shirt, actually sweatshirt. Now, this is not a Walmart advertisement. This is, in fact, the Pro Happy sweatshirt, official merchandise created 20 years ago by Scott Cressman, medical doctor. So the reason why I asked people if they noticed any Easter eggs earlier is you'll see that there is a Pro Happy sweatshirt in that picture, if you have eagle eyes, and a Pro Happy sweatshirt right there on a Darth Vader. So I've mentioned before that I made a movie, that my friends and I made a feature-length film in high school. It was a multi-year project, and that movie was called Super Pro, the movie. Now, in that movie, I played two characters. One was friend Glenn Miller, Ben Murray, very similar names. And then I also played Pro Happy Darth Vader. Now, Pro Happy Darth Vader is a long building character where essentially in the early 2000s, there was a lot of mocks or spinoffs of Darth Vader that were just very anti the dark villain of the Star Wars franchise at that point. And so there was a Chad Vader who was a store manager who was, you'd have to have lived in the early 2000s. And then also, Scott created Pro Happy Darth Vader. And the joke was turning all these characters and figures into someone who is pro-happy. And pro-happy was essentially our way of saying, believe it or not, things have been highly politically contentious for the last 20 years. Maybe it's just Southwest Michigan with the Tea Party there. But there's a lot of political contentions, and the idea was, how about let's stand on something that we should all be able to be agreeing upon, which is that we should be people who are happy. Not that differences don't matter, and not that political opinions don't matter, but let's be people who are happy, who smile, who bring forth joy. So anyhow, yesterday was the local mommy business trick or treat time. And so my daughters and my wife and I, we went around town, and I dressed up as Pro Happy Darth Vader. So a very niche, independent film movie character that probably about 100 people have ever actually seen the movie, and my daughters are going to see it someday soon, probably. But anyhow, so that's that, and I wanted to give some shout outs, and the shout outs goes a little bit hand in hand with what something that I've been thinking about in the story of the day would be. So super big shout out to local cross country runner Tegan Kennedy of the Maumee Panthers for winning her regional meet, taking first, running a school record time, 17:52 in a 5K, and advancing to the state meet. Incredibly impressive there, and that girls team took 7th in the region. So really impressive stuff going on there at the Maumee cross country team. Back in Central Illinois, huge shout out to LVC, the Miners, for winning their regional meet in both the boys and the girls team. So then in Illinois, they'd advanced to the sectional meet. Big shout out to Astoria alumni Justin Batterton for coaching up some championships there. Then a shout out to the boys team there from South Fulton for advancing to the sectional meet as a team. Shout out to Brian Parker and Dawson for getting season best. Brian Parker doing a great job leading that team as a senior from a standpoint of setting the tone of encouragement and everything else. Big shout out, though, also to the girls team. Beth Simmons doing a good job of finishing out the season well, even though she didn't advance to the sectional meet. Huge shout out to Carter Chenoweth for winning that race in the 3-mile race in a 16:08, which is impressive. That he is the second fastest runner in South Fulton program history. Interestingly enough, Justin Batterton had been the previous record holder many years prior to that, and then Isaac Jones, record holder, one of the only person in South Fulton program history to have gone under 16, and Carter Chenoweth has been right there, and he might have gone under 16, but he fell, was able to get himself back up and still finish in first place. So looking forward to see what he does at the sectional meet. So huge shout outs there. Also season best to Dawson Ratcliffe. Good job there to the coaches, Kurt and Michelle. They got a group of kids, 2 of which have ran a lot, and the other 4 boys and have not had a lot of history. So just big shout out there to them. But anyhow, the reason why I bring that up is, so one of the things that I told Brian, and I tell anyone who's a senior preparing for their last cross-country meet or the possible last cross-country meet, I think frequently about my last cross-country meet, which was the state championships. My team advanced. I had the privilege of running with just really great runners all 4 years of my high school experience. I was never the top runner on the team. Could probably psychoanalyze a lot of why I wasn't the best, but ran with a lot of guys who grew a lot over the years, who just did super impressive stuff. Lots of guys who just made running cross-country fun. And so at that meet, I had spent the last week preparing it to be my last cross-country race. So my last race. I'd thought a lot about me and, being ready to put everything on the line and finish strong. And then we did a final stride out as a team. So it would have been Will Dresser, Austin Brown, Andy Barris, Zach Taylor, Jay Marshall, and Taylor Polson, and myself. So, and then I think Tom Griffith was there as an alternate warming up with us. So we do a stride out. And we're there, we're at Michigan International Speedway, so the NASCAR venue, and it's on the interior of the field, about a quarter mile down. You make a turn and you head out. So it's a really poor setup for people like myself who usually go out way too fast and then get burned out. Classic mid-distance. The big restroom facility wasn't too far there. That's just another story. A NASCAR infield bathroom is not the usual venue. So we do this stride out, and Austin Brown, aka Brownie, his last name being Brown, so obviously you call him Brownie, like the dessert. And he said, "All right, Murray, pray for us." So I'd been the one who usually prayed for the team at the start of the race. I don't know how many years. It wasn't all 4 years. It might have, but definitely the junior year and senior year. So right whenever he says that and start to pray, it hits me super hard that this is the last time I'll be racing with those guys at my side. And so not a good time to start tearing up, 3 minutes before the gun goes off. But that's what I start doing as we're jogging back to the starting line. I literally start crying, holding back tears, and the gun goes off and I am just a mess. Like, I actually said hi and talked to, two or three, one or two, maybe three people during the race. I think it was Jay Billsborough, who ran at Coldwater, graduated the year before, Mr. Michigan Track and Field 2006. He was there, and I just I said hi or whatever, something that someone who's seriously locked into a race should never do. And now, years later, I've come to realize that for some people, your worst race is other people's dream. And so I can't remember the time I went, some 18 something. And I was, I think, 20 spots away from last place. Now, this is the state meet, so in order to have qualified there, you have to be a top individual and a top team, and it was really hard to be a top team with how Michigan's set up to qualify. So this was not the lowest division there in Michigan. So usually teams had 5 or 6 guys who were faster than 18:30. They might have had 1 or 2 people, but usually people had a full team. So one of the worst races of my entire life. And the main reason why it was because I had prepared for my last race, not my last race with those guys. So all that to say, if you're a senior and you're competing and you have either the sectional meet there in Illinois and you're not sure if your team's going to advance to the state meet, so it might be your last race, or if you're a senior and here in Ohio or in Michigan, setting yourself up for the state meet, just make sure that 2 things. You're enjoying the process. High school sports is super special because it has a super unifying effect. It's people coming together for a common goal and a common purpose. Be ready for the emotions that this could be the last time racing with those people, that, especially in cross country. And I know people talk about it with football. I can't really speak to the emotions of football, but in cross country, if you're a senior, you've ran thousands of miles over the course of the years, especially if you're at a team like mine. There's guys that I've been running track and field with since 8th grade year. And so I'd put all these thousands of miles over the seasons and over the and over the winter and over the summer with these guys. And so just be prepared for that last time with those athletes and enjoy this as much as you can. And so part of the reason why all this stuff is coming to my mind is, the story time, rambling and thinking about it. But I have an upcoming race. I have a half marathon that I'm running on November 8th, the Churchill's Half Marathon. It's a point-to-point race here in the greater Toledo area. I'm really excited about point-to-point races, and this will be my 4th half marathon. My first half marathon that I ran was my freshman year of college. I had a spring of training, and I admit I missed cross country so much at Moody. I didn't think I'd miss it, but I actually chose Moody over Spring Arbor because I didn't want to race anymore. And then the Chicago Marathon goes off in October, and I literally start crying on my way to church, having to cross in between these marathoners, and just oh my gosh, watching people racing. But I ended up I raced for someone else who couldn't make the race. So my roommate Andrew Whitaker, he had a friend who had a bib, and then LT Newland also ran it. 2 guys there at Moody, upperclassmen. And I don't know. I think I went 1:37:48, I think is the time in my head, 7:44 pace. And not bad for essentially no training, coming off of a massive ankle sprain in basketball, and then, being 195 pounds, training down to running weight. And then I ran another half marathon, basically at the end of my seminary time, and I had been training with some guys there on the Cornerstone cross country team, and then Jordan Salisbury. We went for lots of runs, and it was a really good time. And I wanted to run a sub hour and a half because I thought I had the ability. And I went out and, man, I attacked the first half. Is the Kalamazoo Borges Half Marathon. And, oh, I crushed that first half of it, averaging a 6:38 pace. And then I finished at a 1:31, let's see the official time, 1:31:19, a 6:58. So I got the goal of sub 7 pace, but I didn't go sub hour and a half. And then I trained up again for a half marathon during COVID, but all the races were canceled. It was the best shape of my life. And then this April, I ran a half marathon, and it was possibly, I would argue, the worst race I've ever ran in my life. I went a 1:39:57 was the chip time, and just super embarrassed about it. I hit the wall at mile 6. Anyhow, people aren't watching this to hear all about my half marathon failures. So all that to say, I have this upcoming race, and I'm dealing with all the emotions. And so whenever I coached, one of the things I emphasized was, in order to succeed, you have to be willing to fail. You can't be afraid of failure. And I don't want my daughters thinking of having watched me watch a dad who is unwilling to go out and try something and fail. Very hard to do. Failure isn't fun. But I think about this, and all the while I'm doing sermon study for this week, which I'm preaching through Ephesians 3, which is just a crazy thing to preach through an entire chapter of the Bible. But we're doing it. And in Ephesians 3:19, we have a statement about the surpassing, there we go, there's my Bible, the surpassing knowledge. So just listen to this, Ephesians 3:14 and following. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide, long, and high, and deep is the love of Christ, and to know his love, that surpassing knowledge, his love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. So, as I'm dealing with the emotions, like, I mean, it's really silly, but just the emotions of like afraid of failing and like your identity being wrapped around success. So whenever you succeed, you'd rather be known by someone who's succeeded than someone who's failed. And Michael Jordan did a neat commercial a few years ago saying, "Hey, it's my fault that you know about all my game winners and all the times I missed." And there's really neat commercial, great PR stunt by him. But anyhow, I'm working through these emotions, trying to think, what is it that I need to do to prepare for my upcoming race? And something that just keeps hitting is the fact that it's amusing that I'm afraid of failing, whenever the truth is I am a Christian who has the infinite God who loves me. And that love is not conditioned by whatever I do on the race. Now, the love of Christ compels me to do well, but also compels me then to race in an ethical manner, not to cheat, not to cut off others, have good sportsmanship, to celebrate other people's success. And the interesting reality of racing is that there really only is one person you are truly ever competing against, and everyone else is there to help you accomplish that success. I truly believe this. People will say I'm that stereotypical, everyone gets a participation medal guy, and that's not what I'm stating. You have to overcome the battle in your mind as someone who runs. And I was a mid-distance guy. I truly, wholeheartedly believe, I'm that 800 guy who could run a 400, who could run a mile. Like I was pretty decent at it. And so then cross country was a battle of being willing to be uncomfortable for 3.1 miles. And the insanity of racing 13.1 miles is that hour and a half of discomfort. But the fact of looking at myself in the mirror and saying, will I believe the truth that God's love for me does not waver if I go out and I completely fail at the goal of my race? And something interesting is, so in the terms of track and field, so if you watch track and field in the Olympic level, there's this event called the javelin. And so you're just chucking spears. Shout out to Nathan Van Holten, aka Q. He has a collection of lots of track and field stuff, and he showed me some of the older, more original track and field javelins, and he kind of told me about Bro Greer and the national the world record there. So shout out to Q for helping me appreciate the javelin more while Brittany was competing in college. Who I think she still has the school record in the javelin, if I remember correctly. But anyhow, in the original Homeric Greek, there's this word huperbalo, which means to throw over, and it was used to talk about casting spears or javelins beyond each other in contest. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to show my source is the Greek English Lexicon of the New Testament and other early Christian literature, the 3rd edition, aka BDAG, Bauer, Danker, Art, and Gingrich. And I show this because this is something that we had to do whenever I was in college, which was buy books that are huge, that are now completely online. And I think I bought this on sale. These are originally typically $150 for people to buy. So yeah, poor college students buying massive, heavy books that have moved with me now many miles. But anyhow, in this, so huperbalo means to attain a degree that extraordinarily exceeds a point of scale or extent. So to go beyond or to surpass or to outdo something. Or to put it another way, it means to overthrow. And this is where the English and literature term of hyperbole comes from. So negatively, it could mean to exaggerate. But in Ephesians 1:19 and in Ephesians 3:19, it talks about the surpassing knowledge and the surpassing love of God. And literally, it's a love that surpasses knowledge. So the extent to which you believe that God can or does love you, it's even greater. It's even beyond what you could imagine. So think about your greatest failure, and God can love you even greater than your greatest failure. Having a bad half marathon is really small in the scale of everything. And so that's a truth that I'm going to try to grasp on, is the truth that I have the freedom to fail and to fail hard and to fail well next Saturday. Which brings me up, I'm going to close with a top 5. Now, I haven't done this in a while, since I think I did my top 5 basketball players who would just be really fun to watch on a team who weren't all-stars. I think that was my first or second episode. You guys are going to have to go back and get some opinions on that. No one commented on the YouTube video. Really surprised about that. So I'm going to give, now this is going to be super nerdy, but surprisingly controversial. My top 5 Bible translations. This is a question I get asked as a pastor quite often. And it was actually really difficult for me to get beyond my top 3 Bible translations. Now, I say this as someone who was moderately okay at Greek and Hebrew exegesis. Greek grammar was a whole lot simpler than Hebrew grammar. Dots and squiggles, man, it was really hard to patiently work through Hebrew grammar. I still maintain to this day it is dots and squiggles, but so my top translation is actually so this right here, the NIV. And a lot of people are very anti-NIV, but the 2011 NIV is my favorite Bible translation. And I state that as someone who, whenever I preach through and I do my own translation and I compare it, there's some times where I'm like, I don't agree with how the translators use that participle or that noun or that infinitive, whatever. But I think as far as readability, understandability, and trying to maintain a adherence to the Greek and Hebrew grammar and syntax, I really do think that the NIV wins it for me. Then the second place, this is going to surprise a lot of people, would be the New Living Translation. I was very against New Living and Message and those, paraphrase type translations whenever I was in high school and then even in college. But then in seminary, you're meeting actually people who are on committees who worked with these translations. And then if you're really nerdy like me, you figure out who's on the translation committees and you email them questions as you're reading, through the NLT and reading through, NLT stands for New Living Translation. And I believe that whenever we look at people's literary understanding, people's vocabulary, New Living Translation does excellent. And there's times whenever I'll translate a passage and I'm stumped because I'm not PhD level on any sense Greek, and I'll read the New Living and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense of how those things are supposed to go. And then the third translation, and this is a new development, is actually Eugene Peterson's The Message. Common misconception is that Eugene Peterson just kind of translated it on his own and didn't have any help or assistance. Beware of every Bible translation that is a solo effort. So I had thought it was a solo effort, but he actually had a large group of people for the both Old and New Testament that he would send his translations to and get feedback and input on. And he actually was a professor of the biblical languages prior to his time being a pastor, and this Bible translation was born out through his pastoral desire of his congregation to get words that the New King James or the King James or the New American Standard Bible didn't work well. So that's my top 3. And then after that, I like the Christian Standard Bible. I think it does a good job of having a good readability, and as well as being strict to adhere to the principles of grammar and syntax that you can, as far as moving from one language to another. And then I would also, this is where it was really close, almost just gave it up at 4. I do think that the ESV, English Standard Version, is a pretty good translation, though at times I do know, always compare translations to figure out, stuff that goes on, and we can trust our English translations. So that'd be number 5. The New American Standard, I know a lot of people are really high on that. I just find it fairly laborious to work through. It focused too much on trying to follow grammar and syntax rather than, I think, the proper principle of how do we understand the message which is being spoken in that language. But ultimately, friends, the best Bible translation is the one that you use, the one that's in your hands. So I've got a plethora of Bible translations on my shelves, but ultimately I'm going to just root it with the fact that the best Bible translation is the one that you ultimately use. And I highly advise, if you're ever doing sermon study or just personal Bible study, have something like a New American Standard or an ESV, and then compare it to something like a New Living or a Message, and just so that way you can see some of the nuances of the text. But anyhow, I hope everyone enjoyed the long rambling. I think I see a 30 minutes. Holy cow. New record. Just like races, you should always have shorter rather than longer, but have a good day.